My name's Daniel Murray. I'm a reformed management consultant. Spent a good 15 years working in very big companies across Australia. And so you might ask yourself, what do I know about change management? As Pete said, I've got a new change agent in my life. This is Zoe Mackenzie Murray. This is my little daughter. This was at 3 weeks. She's now 9. I was going to tell you about this beautiful story of how I look in her eyes, but I got a different one. Last night at about 3 o'clock, got up and she was a bit grumpy, making lots of noises, not necessarily from the mouth, mostly from the back, and took her out to change her. And she was staring up at me with his little eyes, tired. I took the nappy off, and just as I was going to move it, it happened. This huge explosion. I was in the shower, I feel like I was pulling poo out of my ear, it was everywhere. And she's completely transformed my life. And I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end. But today I really want to focus on the role empathy plays in change management. And particularly I want to focus on 3 little areas. I want to talk about the role of emotions instead of logic. I want to talk about curiosity over instructions. And controversially, I want to talk about resourcefulness instead of resilience. So I'll tell you about a time back in my corporate world where I had a big problem. I was working for the Commonwealth Bank. Commonwealth Bank owns a big bank in New Zealand called ASB. And I was sent to ASB with a challenge of finding $130 million of cost savings. That was the brief. Need to save the money? Go find it. Now we had a good plan. We had the support of the CEO and CFO. They were my steering committee. We had consultants to support us, McKinsey documentation, benchmarking. We had this great plan. And to get things started, we had an open process where anything was on the cards. You could come up with any idea to save money and we'd look at it. One of the ideas that a young person came up with was, hey, look, we give people leather-bound diaries. Some of our customers get these leather, diaries with ASB on it. I think they're rubbish. I think we should get rid of them. I said, sounds like a good idea. How much are they worth? About $180,000 a year we spend on these leather diaries for high-value customers. Now, that wasn't going to get us to 130 mil, but every bit counts, right? So I walk over to the person who runs that business division and say, hey, here's a really simple quick win. You sign this off, diaries are gone, we got some runs on the board. Anyone from New Zealand here? This was the impression I got from the Australian person going over to New Zealand to tell him that we need to get rid of the diaries. I wasn't having a bar of it. No, diaries are important, they need to stay. What was going on here? What was really happening? What are the skills we need to understand the people so that we can get the change? Turns out the skill is empathy. So what is empathy? What do we mean? What do I mean when I say that? But what we do know from economics is that humans are logical, rational, sensible creatures who maximise their return. Anyone want to admit that that's who they are in this room? No, of course not. That's rubbish. That's what we think we are. That's what we tell ourselves. That's what economics describes, but it's rubbish. It's not true. There's this beautiful quote from Brené Brown. Humans believe we are rational creatures who sometimes have emotions, when in fact we are emotional creatures who sometimes act rationally. Does this resonate? Jeep worked this out. Little story about Jeep. Does anyone own a Jeep? Put up your hands. Yep. Okay, I'm going to apologise in advance. This may offend you. Jeeps are terrible cars. Oh, I know we've got people from QBE and IAG, insurance companies. You ask anyone in motor vehicle insurance, Jeeps are terrible. They used to sell 5,000 cars in Australia each year. Today, they sell 35,000 cars in Australia. And what you're thinking is, well, they must have made the cars better. Nah. Cars are still terrible cars. I'm sorry. It's just how it is. What they did was they stopped focusing on the car and they started focusing on you. Ford used to run ads with lists of features down the side. That was Ford's engineers trying to tell us how clever they were. No one cared. No one bought a car because the fifth one down said ABS brakes. No one cared. Jeep stopped showing you the car in their ads. They started talking to your emotions. Wouldn't you like to be adventurous? Wouldn't you like to have a proud grandmother because you were all over the place and she's putting postcards up? Wouldn't you like to feel like you bought a Jeep? Wouldn't you feel like you could go and drive in this place? Now you know that your car's never going to go over anything more rough than a speed bump at Bondi Junction. But you want to have the option, right? We all buy cars because of how they make us feel. If we were logical, how many types of car would there be? One, two, a couple of sizes? Headlights, they'd be the same. Companies change them every year because you want to feel special, you want to feel different. Humans are both rational and emotional creatures, and the emotions often win. Now, my undergraduate degree was in pure and applied mathematics, and I did an MBA, and no one ever taught me about emotions. But emotions become all that matters, particularly in areas of change. So let me define empathy as understanding the rational and emotional drivers of another person. As simple as that. What's going on in your beautiful brain? I want to understand that. And emotions are these things that absolutely really matter. They sit so deep in our brains. They are so critical to us. And they're really complex. I'm not smart enough to work all that out, so I keep it really simple. In change, I want to talk about 4 emotions. The first one is hope. Right? Hope is the vision. It's what we grow. That's why we change. Here's the future. This is where we're going. Second emotion, love. Sounds strange coming from a mathematician, doesn't it? But love's important. Am I cared about? Does my business care about me? Do I care about others? Do I feel connected to them? Are we in this together? This is this feeling of love. The third powerful emotion, justice. Let me ask you a question. You're driving along, someone cuts you off really abruptly. How long does that take out of your journey? How much extra time is your journey going to take because of that? Almost nothing. How do you react? With fury and anger. Oh, I wish I could kill them, right? Because it's unfair. It's unfair, and justice is an incredibly powerful emotion. The last one is fear. Fear is one of the most powerful emotions that any human will ever experience. There was potentially once a species of human who didn't experience fear. They're no longer with us because they didn't run away. They were swept out of the gene pool, right? We are built to fear. That's what keeps us alive. And what happens when you take these 4 emotions and when change happens, there's uncertainty in a VUCA world, as we talked about earlier, something interesting happens. They start to work in different ratios. You trigger fear, and that hopeful dream, that beautiful future that you've painted, becomes almost irrelevant. Fear will win every time. And if I come back to the diaries, what was going on with this manager? What was happening? Well, I'd triggered fear through justice. He felt it was unfair. Why did he have to give up his diaries? Why couldn't someone else give up something else? This is unfair. And I'm scared now that you're going to keep taking stuff away from me. I'm scared that my power's gone. Who am I if I can't have all the things that I used to have in my control? So how do we overcome this? Well, I had quite a novel approach. I gave him a piece of paper. And I said, you know what? You might be right. Maybe the diaries are really vitally important. I don't know. But what I need you to do is on that piece of paper, write down the 3 names of the people we'll need to fire so you can keep the diaries. We've got to save the money. We know this. We've talked about this. We've built this out. We absolutely need to make the cost savings. What I did was I put it back towards love. Do you care about your people more than you care about the diaries? Are you willing to give this up? You're in control. I'm not taking this away from you. I want to downplay this idea of fear and ramp up this idea of caring. Now, unfortunately, if you're a customer of ASB, you no longer get a leather diary. But I can tell you, he felt more in control, and the people who worked there felt more empowered and in control. Humans are rational and emotional, and if we ignore emotions, we're ignoring humans. We are not connecting with them. We will trigger fear, we will trigger injustice, and everything else won't matter. Second thing I want to talk about is this idea of curiosity over instructions. Okay, so instructions are really good for computers. They're great. I love them, right? You tell them what to do and they just do it. Humans, not so much. Right? We feel belittled, particularly when we go to university and we study all this time, we're really smart and we've got great self-esteems, and then someone just tells us to do stuff. So what's going on here? Well, you see, what happened was it took 3.5 million years for our brains to slowly evolve from this guy over here on the left to present day. At that time, it more than doubled in size, and in terms of complexity and surface area, it exploded. We're incredibly smart now, and that took a really, really long time. Then, once we start to interact with the world, we start to build these mental models. These pictures of how the world works, right? So I see someone and they look like me, and therefore I think I know how they think, and I experience the world using these shortcuts. Someone said earlier that, we don't think like little children. Little children don't have these. They're developing them all the time. They're building them. But our brains weren't designed to live in the world we live in. Our brains were designed to learn everything we ever need to know by about the age of 15, survive for the next 20 years, and then die at a ripe old age of 35, 40. Right? That was our experience over the last thousands of years. And the evolution of our brain isn't fast enough to adapt to a modern society. We, not so long ago, lived in small villages where it was entirely possible that you would never meet someone who wasn't like you. That was our experience. Mobility was low. If you lived in a small village in Mongolia, there is buckly chance you ever met someone from the other side of the world. And so these mental models became quite useful, right? Because I see someone, they probably think like I think, we'll think the same way, shortcuts everything, we don't have to go and experiment, explore. Is that the world of today? Absolutely not. Today we live in incredibly complex environments. We are connected to people all over the world all the time in more ways than we can ever imagine. We're Snapchatting, we're Twittering, we're doing all sorts of crazy stuff. And our brains aren't designed to live in this world. These mental models suddenly fail us. Empathy is connecting with other humans. It's building these understandings. And now more than ever, you will run into people who do not think like you. They don't look like you, they don't smell like you, they don't eat the same food, none of it. So we need to think about how this interacts with our brain. Because if I say the word homeless person, in your brain, you immediately pull out a little mental model, a little file, and there is a run sheet there of what that means. You might even draw a picture in your mind. You might even think of a specific person. And every time you think of homeless person, that's what you bring out. Yet if you go and talk to a homeless person, they will not describe themselves as that. It'll be far more complicated. If I described you based on how I saw you and the mental impression I had, would I be right? No. You're incredibly complex, right? So how do we deal with this? Well, we need to step outside of our mental models. We have a third brain. It's our curious brain. It's our inquisitive brain. It's the brain that allows us to explore and discover. Problem is, it takes up a lot of energy and we tend not to use it. So I want to talk to you about, in change, how can you lead with empathy? Is there a process we can use to start to do this? I built this process because I do not have natural empathy. I'm a maths guy, right? And I needed to learn how to build it as a process. I don't believe empathy is something you've got or don't have. I believe it's a process and a capability you can develop. And the first step in developing that is to be consciously curious. Park those mental models, step into that third space. Forget what you thought you knew and move forward. Once you've become consciously curious, you can then go and openly explore. Now, too often, if you don't become curious before you start to explore, you do an amazing little trick that humans do. It's called confirmation bias. Humans are brilliant at taking in all the information which confirms our mental model, ignoring anything that rejects it. You need to be consciously curious before you explore, otherwise you will fall victim to your own brain. Openly explore, ask questions, shut up and listen. We've talked about this already, right? This group over here was table 9, great job. That's exactly right. If you can experience it, walk in someone else's shoes. Experience the emotions that person might feel. Once you've done that, the third stage is to challenge your model. Pull back up that mental model you had. I thought homeless people were all dirty, alcoholics, drug addicts, lazy. Now my experience, well, that's not really true. And once I experience that and start to reshape my mental model, I'm able to change the way my brain is wired and interact differently. The last stage is now leading in this pace. Let me tell you a little story. I was at high school, grew up on the Sunshine Coast, and one day at school I had for lunch a bread roll with roast chicken and chips and gravy in the roll. You know, best day of my life, right? And I'm sitting there and I'm about to tuck into this roll, and a good friend of mine, I'd known for a long time, she came up to me and she just started berating me. Can't believe you're doing that, that's disgusting. Don't you know that eating animals is murder? So many millions of animals die because of people like you. You should stop eating meat. I was really annoyed. 1, it was lunchtime, I didn't want to think about anything. 2, I was in love with this roll, and she was going to get between us. 3, I was pretty sure that last week she was eating a pie. What had happened? What had happened is she'd become curious about animal rights. She'd gone off and explored. She'd found new information which challenged her old perception. She'd challenged her model, she'd changed her mind, and she was now in this space of leading with empathy, and she thought it was her job to change my mind. How often does that work? Hands in the air. It doesn't, right? Yet we do this all the time. We send leadership teams off to a retreat where they think about the company and they come up with a purpose and they have a whole revelation. They come back and they say, we're now this. And most people at work go, I'm doing the same stuff I was doing yesterday. Leave me alone. We do it, we have the pro-Trumpers and the anti-Trumpers, and they sit there and yell at each other about why the other's wrong, expecting that sometime soon, through all this yelling, they're about to change their mind. Does it work? No, never. If you want to lead with empathy, you need to help create curiosity in others. I'll give you an example of the greatest person at this that I've ever seen. Sir David Attenborough is an incredible environmentalist. But he doesn't tell you to be an environmentalist. He makes you curious about the animals. He drops you into worlds where you can explore and be with them and relate to them and feel them. One week we have to save the antelope from the lion, and the next week we've got to save the lion. And you explore and you change your mind through this journey that he takes you on. He doesn't make you an environmentalist by telling you to be an environmentalist. He makes you curious. You do all the hard work yourself. This is the power of leading with empathy through curiosity. The last thing I want to talk about, and as I said, somewhat, hopefully not controversial, is this idea of resourcefulness and the importance it plays in developing culture within our businesses. Now, because I've got a little tiny girl, I thought of stories that I'd want to tell her and stories she'd want to hear. And so I made up this little story. It's a little story about a rhino and a monkey. The rhino and the monkey used to live around this big tree in the plains. And one day there's this huge storm rolling in. And the storm buckets down and hailstones rain down, and these big hailstones start to smash into the tree and the monkey and the rhino. And once the storm passes, the poor monkey's laying there, broken, sore. He turns to his friend the rhino and says, "Rhino, are you okay?" The rhino says, Yeah, I'm fine. Monkey says, but those hailstones, how come you're not hurt? He said, well, I've got thick skin, I've got tough skin. Monkey says, well, what do I need to do? He said, well, all you got to do is get tough skin, thicken up, toughen up. So the monkey goes and gets some clay and he puts it on his arms, he bakes in the sun, he's thinking, yeah, it's going to work, it's awesome. Can't climb the tree at the time, but it's okay, he's going to be tough, right? And then the next storm comes and the rain buckets down, washes off the clay, and the hail buckets down, smashes into the poor monkey. After this passes, he says to the rhino, are you okay again? I'm dying here. The rhino says, look, little monkey, you just got to toughen up. A bit dejected, the monkey lays back against the tree, and out of the tree pops a little squirrel. Monkey looks at the squirrel and says, are you hurt? Are you okay? The squirrel says, yeah, I'm okay, I'm fine. The monkey says, well, do you have thick skin? Are you tough? The squirrel says, no, I don't have thick skin. You see, we can't all have thick skin. I hide in the tree. There's a little space in here for me. We can't all have thick skin, but we can all find a way to thrive through these challenges. We just have to look at what's around us. So the monkey thinks about this. And as the next storm starts to appear on the horizon, rain starts to bucket down, the monkey walks over, he sits underneath his friend the rhino, and lets the hail pass. We don't want monkeys who have thick skin. We need our monkeys to be monkeys. In an ever-changing VUCA world, we need more capabilities than ever. We need more diversity than ever. In Australian businesses, we have plenty of rhinos. We got tons of them. We do not need more rhinos. And we do not need monkeys forced to become rhinos. We need to teach our people about resourcefulness. We need to help them find a way to get by with their capabilities, with the things at their disposal. We've got to support them through these storms. From my perspective, emotions are critical, and we don't talk about them enough. Curiosity is the key to helping change. And we need to build resourcefulness in our people. From my perspective, empathy is an incredible gift. The greatest gift you can give to another person is to understand the beauty and complexity in their brain. I've decided to spend a few months at least with my little girl, because she's 9 weeks now. Next week she'll be 10. Soon she'll be at school. Next minute she'll be stealing my keys, borrowing the car, and it'll fly by. I've decided that it's time to step away from doing those sorts of things. My vision is to help companies build empathy as a capability. Share the things that I know, learn so much more because I don't know that much. But hopefully change businesses so that when this little girl enters the world, it's a world of caring, empathetic humans helping each other to thrive and grow. Thank you all very much.